I have never watched a Transformers movie before. So I decided for these next 9 days, I'm going to watch every single Transformers movie in chronological order. This is one of the biggest franchises I've just never got into as a kid. And since it's summer, I decided what better time than now to finally do this. Every single day, I'm going to be watching each Transformers movie, so stay tuned. At the very end, I'm going to be ranking every single one. With that said, let's get started.
Welcome, Megatron.
Alright, you guys, we're back with a brand new challenge, our Transformers challenge. The first movie today was The Transformers the Movie, this 80s animated Transformers movie based off the TV show from the time. First off, I didn't like the title. Too many does. As Justin Timberlake said in The Social Network, dropped the does. It should have been either The Transformers movie or Transformers the movie, not The Transformers the movie. But anyways, this feels less like a movie and more like product placement. As someone who did not watch the 80s animated show, again, this is my very first Transformers project. I've never seen anything Transformers. That was never really my thing as a kid. I just didn't know anything. The only Transformers I know are Optimus Prime, um, Bumblebee, and Megatron, and that's about it. But yeah, I didn't recognize like anything. It's just a whole lot of like stuff that I don't recognize happening. I don't know like anything. They don't introduce you to like anything whatsoever in this film because you're expected to know it. You're expected to have seen this show, but it's just something I haven't seen. So it's just like a lot of stuff happening. It's very short. It's like 80 minutes, including beginning and ending credits. So it doesn't go by too slowly. And I like the animation. The animation's pretty solid, and I like all of the music throughout the film. But again, that feels like product placement. There's just so many like different Transformers and Decepticons, and it never clicked with me. If you enjoy this movie, that's great for you. This personally just wasn't a movie meant for me as someone who didn't grow up with the show or anything. That's also not very beginner friendly whatsoever, since again, I haven't seen anything before this, but it's solid. Maybe I'll revisit this film one day once I've seen like more of this stuff. But it was a pretty mediocre experience. The fact that Orson Welles is in this was his final role before he died, is a pretty fun trivia fact. But again, I'd probably give this like a 5 out of 10. Again, more people are probably gonna like this if they've seen the show or are more familiar with this. But just Transformers the movie, it was a pretty whatever, alright experience. Day number 2 of my Transformers challenge, the actual technically star of my challenge. I watched Michael Bay's Transformers from 2007. Overall, this is a pretty good introduction for the Transformers franchise. Again, as someone who knows nothing about it, it does a good job of introducing like the Autobots and Decepticons, like their whole thing, and the main characters, and also the human characters are pretty good as well. Let me talk about some positives first. The CGI is amazing. Bro, I don't know what they were cooking in the 2000s with like Lord of the Rings, Transformers, and Pirates of the Caribbean. It just looks amazing even to this day. Probably because the VFX artists weren't being overworked and were actually paid and given lots of time to do stuff, unlike today. Even movies from like this year that look pretty ass. But this looks really good and very entertaining action movie. 2.5 hours, but it doesn't feel slow whatsoever because there's a lot of stuff. Not only are they introducing all of the Autobots and Decepticons, even though basically only Optimus Prime and Bumblebee are like really developed, it's nice seeing their whole conflict and everything. And the humans are also pretty interesting. Shia LaBeouf's Sam and Megan Fox's Michaela are obviously the highlights. They're really like interesting characters, nothing too out of the ordinary, but this cast is like pretty stacked, yo. Like John Turturro's good, Anthony Anderson's good, Tyrese Gibson's good. Even though there's like way too much characters, way too many military guys, I never cared about the military part of the film. That's probably the biggest complaint I have with it. It's very overstuffed. There is so much going on in this movie. And even with 2.5 hours, unfortunately, not everything gets fleshed out. It's a really fun action movie. I would definitely not say it's one of my favorites, but it's a pretty good start to this universe. Again, they were bringing back the Transformers from like the 80s. Transformers was like many 80s hit franchises. They just kind of nothing happened with them in the 90s and in the 2000s as well. And probably Transformers was like the biggest success. Probably because like cars and trucks always are going to be popular with little kids. And this film proves that. Even though I'm not the biggest like car guy myself, this was fun to watch. It's a very funny movie too. There were so many clips you see on like IG Reels like every couple weeks. It's crazy to see. And this also does feel like a very Michael Bay movie. I'm not the biggest fan of his. It's always trying to be super cool, for like the bros and dudes and stuff. And like over time, it doesn't really like age the best. It's a little dated as well. That's probably like one of my biggest complaints. But for a 2.5 hour action movie meant to set up like a big franchise, it's really good. I'd probably give this a light 7 out of 10. I like this movie. I would revisit in the future. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But yeah, overall, this is a pretty good start for the Transformers franchise. I wasn't expecting much, but even though this won't be one of my favorite movies from this era, it was still a good ride the whole way through.
Now how about I park my foot in your ass? What size shoe do you wear?
Day number 3 of my Transformers challenge, I watched Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Or as I'm gonna call it, Transformers 2. Because honestly, after this point, the titles for these movies just get like more and more stupid, and I just don't feel like calling them by their actual names. But this is just a more mediocre version of the Transformers 2007 movie. Basically, everybody returns from the first movie, all of the human characters and all of the Transformers as well. And although there are a couple additions, not really much is added. The characters that are already in the last film, Sam, Michaela, Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and everybody else whose name I don't really remember because I suck with names, they don't really get that much development at all. At first, Sam goes to college, but then, the Fallen returns and he has to help out the Transformers in the military. It's just, not really my thing overall. I wasn't overall, the most, familiar with all of these people because, like I said, with the last movie, so much stuff is introduced but little gets developed. And again, no characters get that much development in this movie. And the new characters, I don't even care about. The Fallen is just, a mediocre villain. Honestly, all of the Transformers just really blend into me, other than, the big three, of course. And there's the two little annoying Transformers. All the designs look a little similar aside from different colors here or there, and they don't really have that much personality either. Again, visual effects are really good, the action sequences are top notch, but you really feel the length of this film. Even though the last movie was also 2.5 hours, this one, especially with the first half, it just goes on way too long. It should have been 10-20 minutes shorter. That would have been a more enjoyable experience, because it's just a worse version of the last film. It's a very by-the-book sequel. Nothing interesting or unique is introduced. It just kind of feels like a cash grab, honestly. Now, at the time, they really hated this Transformers movie. It's a 16% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I don't think it's that bad of a movie. It's mediocre. It's not bad or anything. From what I've heard, it gets a lot worse from here. But it's just a subpar follow-up to the last Transformers movie. I don't have that much to say about it overall, other than everything's just worse, including the humor. I'd probably give this a light 5 out of 10. This is the definition of a mediocre action movie. I don't think it's gonna get much better than this, but I'll just have to wait and see.
Do not hit my car! It's a collector's item!
Day number 4 of the challenge, Transformers Dark of the Moon. The last film in the OG Michael Bay trilogy isn't as bad as I would expect it to be. It does follow some similar sequel structures to Revenge of the Fallen, but it just does them better. At this point, I'm more familiar with all of the human characters and Transformers, and I do find them pretty likable. Unfortunately, no Megan Fox. It's a shame. The new love interest, she's fine. But Sam, his parents, and everybody else that returns, they're pretty solid. Again, not much character development, but at this point we've known them for 3 films, so it's pretty nice to see them. I wasn't expecting Transformers to have this much lore. I thought they were just like a bunch of robots you can turn to cars and that's it. But the lore with Sentinel Prime and all of the stuff going on, the human villains, I found that interesting. I'm absolutely abysmal with names, so sorry if I'm not like specifically referencing something. And the action was interesting, but the ending to this film, I watched it today. I do not remember like a single thing that happened. There's the final fight scene, and the film basically ends right there. And this is the last time like any of the human characters from this film appear. The next film is kind of a reboot, which I'm not really looking forward to. But overall, it's a fine action movie. You know, some of the new stuff introduced isn't fully fleshed out, like Frances McDormand and John Malkovich. They're kind of just there, not doing much. But to wrap up this trilogy, it's pretty solid. You know, visual effects are great. This was the first Transformers movie to make $1 billion, which makes sense. Big action movie. One thing I noticed is a lot of people like to blame like the MCU for like ruining movies. You know, everything has to be like funny. You know, nothing's too serious. Big action spectacle. And all of the criticisms people give the MCU, you find a lot of that stuff in these Transformers movies. They're making jokes every few seconds. Nothing's too serious. You know, occasionally you have to be serious, and of course the third act, just big action spectacle. That's one thing I noticed. Overall, I'd probably give the movie a light 6 out of 10. Not good, but it's not entirely bad either, you know? Anyways, we're done with the OG Michael Bay trilogy, and now we're on to the next installments.
Excuse me, lady, excuse me! Oh my god! How do you say get the fuck out of the way in Chinese?
Day number 5 of my Transformers challenge, we had Transformers Age of Extinction. We're already halfway done with the challenge, which is kind of surprising, honestly, because for my DCEU challenge, like, that was 16 movies, and this challenge is just 9. But anyways, for a movie that was supposed to be a reboot of the franchise, it's so bad. Like, the original Transformers trilogy, they weren't a masterpiece or anything. It wasn't like watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy or even the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. But man, Age of Extinction is so bad when it comes to basically anything. The characters are just so unlikable. Mark Wahlberg and the rest of the cast, they're so boring, forgettable, and annoying. At the beginning when it's Mark Wahlberg and TJ Miller, match made in hell. Mark Wahlberg makes Shia LaBeouf look like Leonardo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt, because Mark Wahlberg's just out of it the whole time. The only character I liked was Stanley Tucci's character Joshua, because he was kind of funny.
Oh, this is the perfect place to hide, a big glass box! Nobody will ever find us here,
Which, like, even then, this is like the least funniest of the Transformers movie. But just nothing interesting. It's the same thing the 4th time. We're just doing the same movie over and over, except in like a different city. It's just nothing interesting. The actions, we've already seen it before. Even though there's like new characters, they're just like whatever. Like, you got John Goodman and Ken Watanabe voicing Transformers, and it's like, no one even cares about them. It's just so forgettable. This is one of the worst movies to ever make $1 billion. This, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, and Jurassic World Dominion, I have no clue how these atrocious movies actually were able to gross $1 billion. Which this movie I can kind of understand. China loved this movie because, you know, this movie's... There's nothing memorable or even that good about it. Like, the action sequences are fine. They're not as good as the previous movies, and the visual effects are fine. But Michael Bay just got worse and worse at making like a good Transformers movie. There's nothing of substance like whatsoever. Like, even you have like dinosaur Transformers in this movie, and it's like not even that cool because they just like pop up out of basically nowhere. And this movie's even longer. Like 2.5 hours was pushing it for the last trilogy, but this movie's 2 hours and 45 minutes. And for 2/3 of that runtime, nothing of worth even happens. Each of these Transformer movies somehow keeps getting worse and worse, and it's like they should be getting better since we know this formula a little bit more. I would have to give this movie a 3 out of 10. It would have been a 2 out of 10, but Stanley Tucci's kind of funny, you know, especially when he's crashing out in China. That's probably the highlight of the movie, even though they last like probably a minute or two in runtime. Honestly, not looking forward to the last Michael Bay movie in this series.
Move, bitch, get out of my way. Move, bitch, get out of my way.
Day number 6 of the challenge. Transformers The Last Night. Transformers The Last Night? If explosive diarrhea were to manifest into film form, it would turn into Transformers The Last Night. This is one of the worst and maybe the messiest blockbuster film I have ever seen. There is so much random stuff happening in this film that just doesn't make sense whatsoever. It's just so random that it just baffles me. Like, they introduce all this medieval stuff into this universe that's also supposed to be a sequel to Age of Extinction, but also follow up to the original Michael Bay trilogy. And you have all these new characters, and you have this like night stuff, and also Optimus Prime's goals are different. It is just such a mess of a film that it just felt like it robbed my time while I was watching it. Like, nothing makes sense. This feels like an AI generated movie. If you would ask AI to make a Transformers movie, this would what it would be. You know, Mark Wahlberg's in this film, even worse than the last film, one of the worst haircuts I've seen in a while. You have Anthony Hopkins in this film, you just absolutely waste him. I don't even remember the villain of this movie. That's the problem with the Transformers movies, they all have like generic villains. And, but that's not even the worst part. Technically speaking, this is maybe the worst blockbuster film I've seen. The aspect ratio changes every few seconds. It goes from being like the full screen to part of the screen. The cinematography is inconsistent. The editing really stands out. It's just so bad. There's like 50 camera angles, each with different camera lenses and everything. It just looks horrible the whole time. Michael Bay got worse and worse with each film. I'm making a Transformers movie. Like, I don't even remember the plot. The action of this film isn't even that good. Like, the action of the last few films were good, but I don't remember like a single action spectacle. Like, all these Transformers and like humans are just like flat as hell. There's nothing interesting going on with them. This is like one of the worst blockbuster films I have ever seen. Like, this is actually like a disgrace to the Transformers franchise, which is crazy to actually like say out loud, but it is. Michael Bay, his last Transformers movie is just like absolutely disgraceful. I would rather watch Batman and Robin and Morbius than have to watch this movie. It is actually that bad. This is one of the worst movies ever time. Not the worst. I mean, the Transformers, like, they still look good. There's like a couple things that aren't the worst thing in the world. There's nothing redeemable, but not everything is the worst of the worst. Like, this isn't like War of the Worlds from last year, for example. It's not that bad, but it gets pretty close to being that bad. I would have to give this like a solid 2 out of 10. One of the worst blockbuster movies of all time, and it's just one of the biggest wastes of time I've ever seen in film form. Do not watch this movie. Like, if you would consider watching this movie, do not watch this movie. You can watch literally any other Transformers movies, but not The Last Night. It is seriously that bad of a movie. No wonder it flopped.
They literally call themselves Decepticons. That doesn't set off any red flags?
Enough!
Day number 7 of my challenge. Today I watched Bumblebee. Technically the only Transformers spin-off, but a really good experience. Better than any previous film I've watched for this. Bumblebee is completely different in formula to the Bayformers movies. Instead of having plenty of Transformers and human characters, it dials it back a ton, with very few human characters and even fewer Transformers, basically just Bumblebee and a few villains. But because of that, it is such a breath of fresh air and a breeze to watch. The film's short and the conflict is pretty simple. You know, it's basically the Iron Giant, but in Transformers film, which is a really good concept, and even though you've probably seen a film similar to this a couple times before, either way, it's a really nice experience. Haley Steinfeld and John Cena's human characters are really good. Haley Steinfeld's character Charlie having to deal with her trauma of her father dying with the help of Bumblebee, and John Cena just being like a fun kind of like antagonist, kind of like not, and it's just like enjoyable. The other characters are pretty funny as well, although not the most memorable. Bumblebee's fun. Obviously, he's probably the most fan favorite Transformers out of every one of them. No surprise he got a film, and this film fully shows why he's such a popular character. You know, he's fun, energetic, and he kind of feels like a Labrador, not really this like big, powerful Transformer. And with the two villains of the film trying to like hunt him down, it's just overall very entertaining conflict. The film does get worse the longer it goes on. The first act's really good, then the second act and the third act are like worse and worse. The action isn't as impressive as the early Michael Bay movies, but again, for what it's trying to accomplish, it's a really fun watch. Even if you're not a big Transformers fan, you can find plenty of enjoyment in it. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's still solid. I'd probably give this like a strong 7 out of 10. I wish we would have more spin-offs to like this Transformers universe, even though they probably wouldn't make any money. It'd just be interesting to see. This film showed that basically, if you just dial down like all of this like extremity, all of these characters, the result can be a really solid film that's fun for everyone who watches it. You may have wondering why I was sleeping. Because today was day 8 of the challenge, and I watched Transformers Rise of the Beast. One of the most boring blockbuster films I have ever watched, you guys. No exaggeration. It's basically another reboot of the franchise. It's technically a sequel to Bumblebee. It takes place in the 90s now instead of like the 80s, but there's just nothing to say. It's not remarkably good in any way, but it's also not remarkably bad either. There's nothing I can point and say, man, this is like peak cinema, or I can point at this like, wow, that was really bad. One of the worst things I've ever seen in movies. It's just another Transformers movie. It lacks all of like the extremeness of the Bayformers movies, and it overall just brings in nothing. It's not funny, the action isn't special. In fact, the CGI of this movie is probably the worst in the series, which is crazy. Going back to 2007, better than CGI in 2023. I mean, we already know why. All of the CGI VFX artists are just overworked, and no practical effects are just non-existent these days. Because everything's just green screen, green screen, green screen, blue screen. There's just nothing much I have to say. Like, nothing remarkable happens. You know, the lead played by Anthony Ramos. You know, at the beginning it sets up like his like situation while he's struggling, how he meets the Transformers, and you know his friends also there, and that's about it. That's all of the development they get once the Transformers are introduced. Is just fighting another generic villain that basically we've seen time and time again. The big like gimmick of this film is supposed to be like the beasts, like whatever. I know the beasts are like fan favorite Transformers characters, but like from watching this movie, I wouldn't see why. There's like animal Transformers, like we had like dinosaur Transformers before, and we have like 100 different Transformers as well. So what makes this one so special? And nothing. Nothing makes it special. Even though it's not the longest film, especially compared to the Bay films, it still drags on, and is just the most boring and forgettable Transformers movie. I can see why this was a disappointment. This was a pretty stale formula up to this point, and we don't have like a single live action Transformers to this day. Probably because this one underperformed a lot, and what are we supposed to do? We have to have like another reboot of this franchise, even though we've basically already had what, like 3 or 4 reboots up to this point. It's just a confusing film, and overall, not one I found much enjoyment from, and sorry, just like a pretty bad movie that I'd give like a solid 4 out of 10. Not the worst thing in the world, but it's nothing good either.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Day number 9 of the challenge, the final day. And my final film was Transformers 1. In mine and most other opinions, the best film in the franchise. Despite being the most recent Transformers film, It is the first one that completely understands why these characters and series have been so culturally relevant for so long. It's not a big action spectacle, there are no human characters, it just focuses on the main Transformers, following Optimus Prime, Megatron, Bumblebee, and Alita. And it's just such an effective film. First off, the animation looks really great. Cybertron and all of the different parts of it are really good looking. And the characters are so fleshed out. The conflict between Optimus Prime and Megatron as they become these characters we know of them today is really fascinating to see. You know, Bumblebee works pretty good as like a funny companion, and Alita is like basically just the female character. But again, she also works pretty good. The story may not be the most complex or anything, but just a really fun film. Although this is like also meant for kids, it also appeals to like older people as well. You know, you're seeing all of these Transformers introduced or reintroduced for like the first time. As someone who's watched all these films and like knows like who like Sentinel Prime is, you know, Soundwave, Shockwave, and all of the other characters, it just really adds to the experience and overall just makes it a very enjoyable experience. This movie did bomb kind of though, and I don't think we're gonna see a sequel to this anytime soon, which is a damn shame because this was like the best movie. It's like really great and shows like why these characters are so effective. Although it's not groundbreaking or anything, or something you haven't seen in other animated movies, for what it tries to accomplish, it does a really good job of doing it. The voice acting of the film is also really good and helps like elevate these characters. After hearing the same voice actors voice these characters again and again, this feels really fresh. And this is just like a really fun movie and the perfect starting point for the franchise. I probably would have liked some of these past Transformers movies more if I would have watched this first, because this is just a great introduction, better than any film, including the first Michael Bay movie. I would have to give this a solid 8 out of 10. This is, in my opinion, the peak of the franchise, and honestly, it's probably going to be that way for the time being. So what do I think of the Transformers franchise? Honestly, this is like one of the most inconsistent blockbuster franchises out there. Basically, all of them are following the Michael Bay formula, like 7 of them basically, including Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast. And instead of focusing on the Transformers, it basically tries to be a disaster movie for most of its run. The first and last films of this franchise, both animated movies, are the most true to the formula, but they're also like the biggest flops. Honestly, I am pretty intrigued about watching more Transformers stuff, especially like the animated 80s show. Will I do it? Maybe. But this was a solid ride. I found a bunch of films I really enjoyed, and also a bunch of stinkers. So let's get started with my ranking list, ranking every Transformers movies from worst to best. Last place, of course, Transformers The Last Night. I mean, come on. Explosive diarrhea the movie. This is... oh my god. This is one of the messiest blockbuster films I have genuinely like ever seen. It is just such a mess of ideas that just do not mix well with each other. And considering all of the other Michael Bay Transformers movies, this one's just like the worst on every aspect. Acting, direction, the screenplay and the technical aspects. Just a horrible movie. One of the worst movies I've ever seen. At number 8, I'm gonna put Age of Extinction. Age of Extinction suffers with lots of problems of The Last Night, but the action's a little bit better, and it's a little bit funnier. Come on, Stanley Tucci's character, he's pretty funny. Maybe I'm gonna do a video on this in the future, just talking about how much of a mess this film is, but it's a so bad it's good film. It's still terrible, but not the worst thing I've ever seen. Next up, Rise of the Beast. Easily the most boring film in the franchise. Even though this is like one of the last films I watched, I just barely remember anything. It introduces like a couple new things, but it's just not as explosive as some of the other films. And they do really waste all of these Transformer beasts. And there's a forgettable villain. The new characters aren't that interesting. And yeah, a new live action Transformers movie. Not something I'm looking forward to in the future. Next up, Revenge of the Fallen. This is also a pretty forgettable film. It's a pretty mediocre sequel as well. It replicates everything Transformers from 2007 did, and it's just worse. The action's not as good, the humor's not as good, but it does have, you know, your signature Michael Bay stuff, and the action is pretty solid for the most part, and the characters aren't the worst thing in the world either. Again, another forgettable blockbuster, but also not the worst thing in the world. Next up, The Transformers the movie. As someone who watched this as the very first movie, looking back on it after watching every movie, it's solid enough. Again, this was supposed to serve as the halfway point for the animated TV show from the 80s. So I haven't watched like season 1 or 2 before this, so I don't know like all of the characters. But it offers some good stuff. The animation's really good, the song choices are good, and there's a bunch of colorful characters. It's pretty short as well, it doesn't waste your time. But it just doesn't offer that much overall as a film and feels more like product placement, meant for people to buy just as many Transformer toys as they could, and it succeeded at that, but overall it really hurt it as a film. At number 4, I'll put Transformers Dark of the Moon. Despite how crazy these later 4 Michael Bay films were, this film, in my opinion, balances the crazy aspects with the Transformer aspects really well. You really have grown to care about all of these characters from the original trilogy, like Shia LaBeouf, John Turturro, and all of the other characters. And Sentinel Prime as a villain, he works pretty well. Again, a lot of stuff is introduced that ultimately doesn't go nowhere. And although it's a little too abstract to me, it wasn't the worst experience in the world. And it's overall just an okay movie. Nothing too good or anything, but I wouldn't mind revisiting this in the future. Bringing us into the top 3, we have Michael Bay's original Transformers movie. Just a great 2000s blockbuster that brings you back to the days of Pirates of the Caribbean and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's just a really fun blockbuster movie to watch. It's one of the most 2000s movies out there. The action, humor, characters, and everything going on just brings you back in time. Although it does have its setbacks, it's just a really fun movie. It may be a little bloated and overstays its runtime, but it's an iconic movie for a reason. Next up, Bumblebee. Basically the only spin-off of the franchise, by dialing back all of these human characters in Transformers and just focusing on just like a couple key characters, it results in a really fun blockbuster that doesn't need you to have seen any of the previous movies. Bumblebee is the most popular Transformer for a reason, and him, alongside Haley Steinfeld, John Cena, and all of the other characters, are pretty nice. The 80s setting does feel forced, and the film does get worse as it goes on, but it's overall just a really fun movie. The opening sequence is amazing, the song placements are really good, and it's a shame we haven't seen anything like this since in the franchise, as this showed that if you just like focus on making a good movie with Transformers, it's a really enjoyable experience. And coming in at number 1, Transformers 1. The most recent film in the franchise. This is the only one that actually feels like a really good Transformers movie. No human characters, and focusing on the backstory of Optimus Prime, Megatron, Bumblebee, and all of the other Transformers movies we've seen throughout all of these films and shows. It's a really fun experience. It's not just a kids movie, but a movie meant for everybody. The animation's really good, the pacing's fun, the jokes actually land for the most part, and it's just a pretty entertaining movie, and you really grow to care about these characters by the end. Again, it's not the greatest animated movie in the world, or like a full-blown masterpiece, but compared to all of these 9 films, I feel like this film succeeds at most at being a really good Transformers movie. But anyways, you guys, that was my thoughts on every single Transformers movie, watching them for the very first time, and also my ranking alongside that. In the comments below, leave your thoughts on all of these Transformers movies. Which ones were your favorites, why do you love this franchise so much, and which ones do you hate so much as well. Be sure to like and subscribe, of course, for more absolute peak content just like this. I also made a video about the DCEU in case you're interested. Should be floating up here. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys this week, and I hope to see you all next time.